My stepmom banished me to the freezing garage for 2 years, so I left her out of my graduation and she completely lost it. I'm 18 now, about to graduate high school, and something just exploded between me and my dad's wife, Chelsea. Honestly, it's gotten so bad that I need to talk it through and figure out if I'm the one in the wrong here. So, a little background: my parents split up when I was a kid, and I stayed with my dad. We lived in a decent 3-bedroom house. He had the master bedroom, I had a good-sized room to myself, and there was a smaller room we used for guests. It wasn't fancy, but it worked. We had a solid routine, just the two of us. Things changed when I was 15. That's when Dad remarried a woman named Chelsea, who's in her 40s. She had 2 kids from a previous marriage, Dean, who was 16 at the time, and Nora, who was 13. So pretty much overnight, I went from being an only child to living in a full house. Right before they moved in, we had to talk about how the bedrooms would be divided. Chelsea came in with a whole plan. She said Dean should have the biggest bedroom because he was the oldest and a boy, which just so happened to be my room. Then she said Nora needed a cozy space to herself, so she should get the guest room. She and my dad, of course, would keep the master. And just like that, I was left with nowhere to sleep. I remember looking at my dad, waiting for him to say something, but he just shifted uncomfortably and stared at the floor. Then Chelsea, all cheerful like she was handing me a gift, said I could move into the garage. She pitched it like some kind of cool private hangout for a teenager, maybe even an apartment of my own. She told Dad they could throw a few things out there and make it nice. Dad doesn't like conflict, especially not with Chelsea, so he went along with it. He told me it could be fun, like having my own place. Spoiler, it wasn't. They did the bare minimum to fix it up. They rolled out an old rug from the attic onto the cold concrete floor, moved in a lumpy couch, a tiny desk that wobbled every time I touched it, and a worn-out bookshelf. That was the upgrade. For heat in the winter, I got a small electric space heater. For summer, a cheap fan that barely moved air. It was still 100% a garage. Nothing about it felt like a bedroom. It wasn't even connected to the house, so I had to go outside every time I needed to use the bathroom or grab food. In the winter, the heater didn't help much. I could literally see my breath at night. In summer, it felt like sleeping inside a car parked in the sun. I'd wake up drenched in sweat. There were spiders all over the place, cobwebs I had to sweep down constantly, and it still smelled like old oil from when my dad used to fix up his car in there. I complained, a lot. I told my dad it was freezing cold, boiling hot, and just flat out miserable. I once found a spider in my shoe. His response? Something like, "It'll get better," or "Chelsea's doing her best," or the classic, "It builds character." Chelsea didn't take criticism well. If she overheard or if Dad passed along what I said, she'd call me ungrateful. She'd say things like, "Most kids would kill for their own space," or "Dean and Nora have to live with the noise in the house, you've got peace and quiet." Once, I snapped back and told her that if it was so wonderful, maybe she or her kids should live out there instead. That got me grounded for a full week. Meanwhile, Dean and Nora got the royal treatment. Chelsea took them shopping for new bedsheets, curtains, posters, and furniture. Their rooms inside the house were decorated and cozy. My space? Still peeling paint and freezing drafts blowing in under the garage door. I felt completely cut off. Before Chelsea came around, my dad and I used to eat dinner together most nights. But once she moved in, those dinners became rare. When we did sit down as a family, Chelsea would make jokes about me emerging from my cave. If I didn't come in because I was studying or just didn't want to freeze, she'd say I was being antisocial. I ended up eating alone a lot, just microwaving leftovers and hauling them back outside. My grades took a hit. It was hard to stay focused in the cold, my fingers would go numb when I tried to type or write. In the summer, the heat made me feel groggy and dizzy. The lighting was awful too, just a single bare bulb hanging from the ceiling. Chelsea would regularly take Dean and Nora out for fun stuff, ice cream, movies, shopping sprees, and never invited me. If I asked why, she'd brush it off with "it's their bonding time," or say she assumed I'd rather chill in my little den. The chores weren't fair either. Since I wasn't in the house much, Chelsea said I should handle more of the yard work or take out the trash for everyone, even though the bins were literally next to the house and not the garage. But the moment that really broke me happened in the middle of winter, about a year after I'd been pushed into the garage. One night, during a brutal cold snap, my little heater died. Just stopped working completely. I tried everything to fix it, but it was toast. The cold hit hard. I piled on every blanket I owned and wore a hat and gloves to bed, but I still couldn't stop shivering. I didn't sleep at all. Around 3 or 4 in the morning, I gave up. I quietly went into the main house and curled up on the living room couch with a couple of blankets I found in the hallway. I just needed to get through the night without freezing. The next morning, Chelsea came downstairs and saw me. She didn't ask what was wrong. Didn't ask if I was okay. Instead, she immediately got angry. Her voice was sharp when she asked what I was doing there. I started to explain about the heater, but before I could finish, she accused me of being dramatic and causing problems on purpose. She even said I probably broke the heater myself just to make her look bad. She said I was trying to ruin her relationship with my dad and make her seem like the evil stepmother. I was still half asleep and freezing cold while she stood over me, yelling. That's when Dad came downstairs, woken up by the noise. Chelsea switched gears instantly. Her voice cracked, and tears started pouring. She told him I was sneaking around at night and making her feel unsafe. Said I hated her and was trying to destroy their family. My dad looked beyond tired. He listened to everything she said, then looked at me. He didn't ask me anything. Didn't check on the heater. He just told me to go back out to the garage and said they'd figure out the heater later. Then he told me to stop upsetting Chelsea. That was it for me. I jumped up off the couch, furious and heartbroken. I screamed at him. I told him I was freezing, and asked if he even cared. I told him the garage was unlivable and he knew it. I yelled that he always took Chelsea's side no matter what. I think I said something like, she treats me like trash and you let her. You don't care about me at all. Chelsea lost it too. She called me a spoiled brat and a liar. Got right up in my face, finger pointing, and told me I was lucky to have any roof over my head. That's when my dad finally stepped between us. But even when my dad stepped in between us, his attention was mostly on me. He told me to calm down and show some respect to Chelsea. Said I was blowing things out of proportion and that the garage wasn't that bad. I was already in tears by then, partly from the cold, but mostly from feeling defeated, hurt, and just completely alone. He told me to apologize to Chelsea. I flat out refused. That's when he told me to go back out to the garage and wait there until he could talk to me properly. So, I did. I walked back out into the freezing cold, still shaking. The broken space heater sat there like a joke, totally useless. It took them 2 full days to replace it, and even then, the new one was another cheap, underpowered thing that barely helped. For those 2 nights, I slept in multiple layers of clothes, bundled up in my winter coat and a hat, and I was still freezing. And honestly, that was just the start of what the next 2 years would look like. I basically withdrew from the rest of the house. I avoided Chelsea every chance I could. My relationship with my dad slowly crumbled. He'd try to talk sometimes, but only when Chelsea wasn't around. And even then, it always felt like he was trying to get me to apologize to her or see things from her perspective. He never truly acknowledged how bad things were for me in that garage. He'd just repeat things like, Chelsea's doing her best, or, you have to meet her halfway, she's trying to blend the family. Now here I am, 18 years old and finally about to graduate high school. I've been working a part-time job for the past year and saving up every penny I can. My only goal is to move out the moment I graduate. The living situation hasn't changed at all, still stuck in the garage. My school gives out a limited number of tickets for graduation. Just 2. And I already knew who I wanted there. One was for my mom. We don't live in the same state, and we've had a complicated relationship because of distance and some of her past struggles, but she's always tried to be emotionally supportive in her own way. She definitely wants to be there for my graduation. The other ticket was for my dad. A few days ago, he asked me about the ceremony and who I was inviting. I told him I had tickets for him and for Mom. That's when he looked at me and said, "All right, and what about Chelsea's ticket? We'll need one for her too." I took a deep breath and said as calmly as I could, "There are only 2 tickets. They're for you and Mom. Chelsea isn't invited." He went silent for a few seconds. Then his face turned red. He told me Chelsea is his wife, that she's been part of the family for years, and that leaving her out would be deeply disrespectful. He said she'd be incredibly hurt if she couldn't come. Well, somehow Chelsea found out. I'm not sure if he told her or if she overheard us. But yesterday, I walked into the kitchen to get a glass of water, and she was waiting. And she was livid. She started right away, saying she'd heard I wasn't planning to invite her to my graduation. Then she launched into accusations, saying I was being vindictive, that I was trying to hurt her and my dad on purpose, that I was stuck in the past and needed to grow up and learn how to forgive. Her voice got louder and louder as she paced the kitchen. She yelled that she'd bent over backward trying to make our blended family work, that she had opened her home to me even though, let's be honest, it was my home first and that I'd been nothing but ungrateful from the beginning. Then she started crying. Full tears. She claimed I was trying to tear her and my dad apart, that I was ruining what should have been a joyful family celebration. She got right up in my face, crying and shouting about how much she'd sacrificed for me. That's when I snapped. All the anger and resentment I'd bottled up over the last few years came pouring out. I yelled right back at her, just as loud. I screamed, You're not welcome because you made me live in a freezing, disgusting garage for 2 whole years while your precious kids got warm, cozy bedrooms inside the house I grew up in. I didn't hold back. I listed everything: the broken heater, the spiders, the suffocating summer heat, the feeling of being shut out in my own home. I told her she made my teenage years feel like punishment, that she never once seemed to care whether I froze or got sick as long as Dean and Nora were comfortable. I told her she had no right to show up and pretend to be some proud stepmom when she had done absolutely nothing to earn that title. I screamed that she didn't deserve to be there to celebrate something I achieved in spite of the misery she helped create. I probably flailed my arms. I was so furious I could barely think straight. And I ended it all by shouting that she would not be part of my moment. She hadn't earned it. That's when my dad came running in, hearing all the noise. He didn't ask what was going on. He just went straight into yelling at me. He told me I was being cruel and out of line, that I was disrespecting Chelsea, embarrassing him, and needed to apologize immediately. He demanded that I tell Chelsea she was invited after all. I looked at him, then at Chelsea, who was now sobbing into her hands but still watching me through her fingers like she was waiting for the show to end in her favor. And I said, "No, she's not coming." Then I walked straight out of the house and back into the garage. Now my dad won't speak to me. He sighs dramatically whenever I'm in the same room, and he's been sending guilt-trip texts saying I need to do the right thing and fix this mess I created. Chelsea's avoiding me directly, but I can still hear her whispering about me to my dad. Dean and Nora look at me like I'm some kind of monster. But the truth is, I really don't want her there. Just the thought of her sitting in the audience, smiling like she was ever proud of me, pretending to be supportive? It makes my stomach turn. Still, he's my dad. And he's making me feel like I'm the bad guy here. So, AITA for telling my dad's wife she's not welcome at my graduation after she made me live in a garage for 2 years? Update 1. Hey again, so it's been about 5 days since I posted. First off, thank you. Seriously. The response has been overwhelming in the best way. I read as many comments and messages as I could, and while it was a lot, it helped me feel seen. I wasn't being unreasonable. I wasn't crazy. A bunch of people asked similar questions, so I want to clear a few things up. About my mom, a lot of folks wanted to know why I didn't just go live with her. After the divorce, she moved several states away. For a while, she was dealing with a bunch of personal struggles, health problems, financial issues, and just trying to get back on her feet. She's doing better now, but back when this garage situation started, she wasn't really in a position to take me in full-time. She's not a deadbeat mom or anything like that. It was just complicated. We talk pretty regularly, and she visits when she can. But yeah, moving in with her back then wasn't something that could just happen overnight. She knew I wasn't happy living here, but I definitely downplayed just how bad it was. I didn't want to make her feel worse. And truthfully, I think I was ashamed. Who wants to admit they're being treated like an afterthought in their own home? Anyway, she's 100% coming to my graduation. And now that I've finally told her the full truth, she's furious with both my dad and Chelsea. Also, about the garage itself, I think some people might have pictured something halfway decent, like a converted basement or a finished guest suite. Nope. Not even close. This was a standard, unfinished, detached garage. Concrete floors. Bare wood walls. A roll-up garage door that didn't seal properly, so bugs and cold air came in constantly. There was no plumbing, no toilet. I had to walk outside into the main house for literally everything: bathroom, kitchen, you name it. And when I said they fixed it up, I meant they dragged out a rug, dumped an old couch in there, and set up a shaky desk. The only light was a single exposed bulb hanging from the ceiling. It was either freezing cold or suffocatingly hot. And the spiders? Constant. Webs, creepy corners, and more than a few nights I woke up with one crawling on the wall beside me. So yeah, thank you for listening. Sometimes I'd spot mice scurrying across the floor. The whole place smelled like damp dust and old car grease. It wasn't just a little uncomfortable. It was genuinely miserable and, honestly, unhealthy to live in. About my dad's finances, why I couldn't just move out. Some folks asked if this was all because of money. No, my dad isn't struggling financially. He's got a solid job. If they really wanted to, they could have found a bigger house where everyone had a fair space. Or at the very least, Chelsea's 2 kids could have shared a room like plenty of siblings do. There were options. But it seemed like Chelsea wanted her kids to have the best of everything, and I was just the extra. My dad never questioned it, he just went along with whatever Chelsea wanted to avoid rocking the boat. I don't remember a single time moving to a different house was even mentioned. Why I didn't report this to CPS or school, honestly. I was scared. I was only 15 or 16 when it was at its worst. I didn't know what would happen if I spoke up. I was afraid my dad would get angry and maybe even kick me out completely. And if CPS got involved? What then? Would they take me away? Put me in foster care? That idea terrified me just as much. As messed up as things were, my dad was still my dad, and deep down, I kept hoping he'd eventually stand up for me. But he never did. I didn't tell any teachers or school counselors either. I was embarrassed. I didn't want people at school to see me as the girl who lives in a garage. I didn't want pity or whispers. I just kept my head down and tried to survive. But after reading all your comments and messages, something clicked. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't being dramatic. What happened to me wasn't okay at all. And what hurts most is realizing just how much my dad let me down. It wasn't just that he stood by and let it happen. He actively allowed it. He chose Chelsea's comfort over my well-being, again and again. So after thinking it through and rereading my own story, I made a decision. I'm standing firm. Chelsea is not coming to my graduation. This moment is mine. I worked hard for it, despite everything she did to make my life miserable. The idea of her showing up, pretending to be a proud stepmom, posing for pictures, it honestly makes me feel sick. The tension at home right now is sky high. My dad barely speaks to me, and when he does, it's to guilt trip me. He says I'm being stubborn, bitter, and unforgiving. Chelsea's playing the role of the wounded martyr, sighing loudly anytime I'm in the room or making comments like, "Some people just refuse to let go of the past." Always loud enough for me to hear. Dean and Nora are fully on her side. They barely look at me anymore. I'm counting the days until I can move out. I might have found a room to rent through a classmate's older sibling, and I'm hoping to lock that in soon. Graduation's in 2 weeks. I don't know how things will shake out, whether my dad will still come, or if he'll try to make it all about Chelsea again, but I'm not changing my mind. She's not coming. Thank you again to everyone who listened, commented, or reached out. Your support made more of a difference than you can imagine. I'll post another update after graduation, or sooner if something major happens. Update 2. Hey everyone, it's been about 2 weeks since my last post and my high school graduation was 3 days ago. A lot has happened since then, so here's the full update. First, thank you again for the support. It's been an emotionally rough stretch, and hearing from so many people helped more than I can explain. So, as I said earlier, I stuck to my decision. Chelsea wasn't invited. My dad was furious all the way up to graduation day. We had multiple fights about it. He called me cruel, said I was being unreasonable, and that I was purposely trying to sabotage his marriage. He accused me of holding a grudge and refusing to give Chelsea credit for trying her best, which he never defined with anything specific. The worst blow-up happened just a few days before graduation. My dad cornered me in the kitchen. At first, he was calm. He said there was still time to make things right by letting Chelsea come. But when I told him again that I wasn't changing my mind, he snapped. He started yelling louder and louder, calling me selfish, ungrateful, and saying I was punishing him and Chelsea for no reason. His face turned red with anger. I yelled back. I reminded him that he had already made a choice years ago when he let Chelsea shove me into the garage and then ignored what it did to me. I told him she made my life miserable for 2 straight years, and now he was mad because I wouldn't let her fake being a supportive stepmom in front of other people. That's when it got scary. He raised his hand. For a second, I honestly thought he was going to hit me. But instead, he just slammed it down on the kitchen counter and shouted that if I was going to disrespect his wife like that, then maybe he wouldn't come to graduation at all. I told him that was his choice, but Chelsea was still not invited. He stormed out and slammed the door. Chelsea tried to talk to me one last time after that. She caught me while I was in the garage, packing up some of my stuff. She cried almost instantly, saying I was breaking my dad's heart and ruining something that was supposed to be joyful. She said all she ever wanted was a happy blended family and that I was throwing all her efforts back in her face. But this time, I didn't yell. I just looked at her and said, calmly, that she didn't have the right to talk to me about family, not after everything she did. Then I told her to leave my garage. She gasped, called me cold-hearted, and stormed back inside. Then graduation day came. I was a mess inside. I didn't know if my dad would actually show up or not. My mom had flown in the day before and was staying in a hotel. She helped me get ready, kept me grounded, tried to lift my spirits. When we got to the ceremony, my dad did show up. He came alone. No Chelsea. He was dressed up, but his face looked like stone. He didn't say much to me, just a flat congratulations. He didn't smile during the ceremony. He sat next to my mom, but from the stage, I could see the tension between them. They were sitting stiffly, with an obvious gap between their chairs. Later, my mom told me he barely said a word to her, and what he did say was short and cold. After the graduation ceremony, my mom had planned a small lunch for us to celebrate. My dad showed up, but the whole thing was painfully awkward. He barely touched his food, answered my mom's questions with short, clipped responses, and barely looked in my direction. He kept checking his phone like he had somewhere better to be. After about an hour, he stood up and said he needed to get going. He gave me a stiff, one-armed hug and muttered, "Well done," before heading out. My mom did her best to make the rest of the day feel special, and I really appreciated her trying, but the whole thing felt like it had a shadow hanging over it. It was hard to feel proud or joyful with all that tension following me home. Since then, things at home have gone from uncomfortable to unbearable. It's no longer just the silent treatment from my dad, it's open hostility in small, passive-aggressive ways. He'll make snide remarks about a cup I left in the sink or complain about how much electricity I'm using in the garage, where I'm still staying for now. Chelsea's back to her dramatic sighs and muttered jabs about how some people are just ungrateful. Every time I walk into a room, she either avoids eye contact or gives me those pointed looks while patting my dad's arm like she's consoling him. Dean and Nora won't even acknowledge me anymore. Dean actually said out loud that I ruined graduation for my dad. The only silver lining? I finalized a room rental. I'm moving out in 2 days. I've been packing non-stop, just trying to get through these last hours. The thought of having my own space, even if it's small, even if I'm sharing a kitchen with strangers, feels like a lifeline. Somewhere safe. Somewhere that's mine. So, that's where things stand. I stuck to my decision, Chelsea didn't come. But the cost of that choice is my relationship with my dad, which at this point feels completely broken. Maybe it was already broken, and I just finally stopped pretending otherwise. For now, I'm focused on getting out and starting fresh. Thanks to everyone who took the time to read this, share support, or offer advice. It helped more than I can explain. I'll try to post one more update once I'm settled, especially if anything changes with my dad. Update 3, 6 months later. Hey everyone. It's been about 6 months since my last post, and I figured it was time to give a final update. A lot of people reached out asking how things turned out, and I truly appreciate all of you who checked in. 2 days after graduation, I officially moved out of my dad's house. One of my friends helped me load up the few boxes I had, and we drove away. The relief I felt closing that garage door for the last time is hard to describe. It was like a weight had been lifted off my chest. My new place is nothing fancy, a small room I rent from my friend's older sibling, but it's warm. It's quiet. It has real walls, a window that closes properly, and no spiders creeping around. It's clean, safe, and most importantly, it's mine. For the first few weeks, I just let myself breathe. I slept without waking up shivering or drenched in sweat. I could study without my fingers going numb. I could sit in peace. As for my dad, that relationship is pretty much gone. We didn't speak at all for about a month after I moved out. Then one day, he called. For a brief moment, I hoped he was ready to actually talk. But it didn't take long for things to go downhill. He opened the conversation by saying Chelsea was still deeply hurt by my decision not to invite her to graduation and that I owed her an apology. He told me I needed to be the bigger person and patch things up. I told him, calmly, that I couldn't apologize for protecting myself. I asked him point blank if he even understood how bad living in that garage really was. And that's when he got defensive. He told me I was exaggerating. Said I was rewriting history. He literally said, "You kids are too sensitive these days. I had it harder growing up." He made it sound like I should be grateful I had a roof over my head even if that roof was a drafty, uninsulated garage. I told him that he stood by and let his wife emotionally abuse me for years. That he never once chose me when it mattered. We ended up yelling at each other. He accused me of being ungrateful for everything he did for me, and I told him he chose his marriage over his daughter. Then he hung up. Since then, we've only exchanged a few short texts. He'll send things like, "Hope you're doing okay," but anytime I try to actually talk about what happened, he shuts it down or tells me I need to let it go. I've also found out from my mom that Chelsea has been spinning the story hard. She blocked me on all social media, not that I was trying to contact her anyway, and for a while, I suspect she was filtering or even intercepting my dad's communication. There were times my texts would go unanswered, or his replies felt weirdly like they were coming from her, not him. Eventually, his phone number changed. I only got his new one through my aunt, his sister, who's one of the few people in the family who actually believes me and hasn't tried to guilt-trip me about it all. I haven't spoken to Dean or Nora. I'm sure they believe whatever version of the story Chelsea gave them. At this point, I'm not even angry. I just don't care anymore. I'm working full-time now, and I've started taking a couple of classes at community college. I'm building something that's mine, slowly but surely. It's not easy, especially during the holidays or when I see other people my age with supportive families, but I'm managing. I'm healing. As for my dad, unless he's willing to take real accountability for what happened, I don't think there's anything to fix. And with Chelsea still in the picture, I honestly don't see that happening. Thank you to every single person who read my story, left a kind comment, or offered support. You helped me find clarity, and you reminded me that I wasn't crazy or overreacting. That what happened to me wasn't okay. And that I had every right to set a boundary, even if it cost me a relationship. This will probably be my last post on the matter. I'm moving forward now. Wishing you all peace and strength, especially during the holidays. Merry Christmas.